Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I have a chalk drawing to share with you. This is for the letter N for our Islamic Waldorf inspired main lesson block on the letters. So the first thing I'm going to do is erase our chalkboard. These are small portable chalkboards. They measure 32 inches by 22 inches and they're from Waldorf Supplies. I'm also using my Sargent Art square chalk pastels. I've got a new box right on the side, but we're going to try to use some of these colors that we don't typically use. I'm also using this book called Al-Khidr. This is a story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam and Al-Khidr, and I love this book. It's super gorgeous, and I like how the drawings are kind of like watercoloring, and they have all these beautiful pinks and purples and blues, and I thought that this would make a really beautiful drawing for today's main lesson. And plus we get to use a lot of the colors that we don't typically use, and that's great because we always end up going through all of our earth tones first. So we're going to try to use a lot of the pinks and the purples and the blues and the reds for this chalk drawing. Now, for a fairly simple chalk drawing, this one takes me nearly a half an hour, so it took a long time to do. I'm not quite sure why, but we're going to start at the bottom of this chalk drawing with some of the images that are going to be in the foreground, and we're going to make some houses that resemble the ones that were in the drawing from the book. There's more information about the book and other resources that I have used for this Waldorf-inspired main lesson block. So I'm going to do some of the landscape that's towards the bottom of this drawing, and I'm trying to use a lot of the pinks and the purples and those kind of colors for this chalk drawing, but it actually proves to be a little bit challenging. I really do like the way that it turns out in the end, but the other challenges that I had for this chalk drawing are that it was really hard to come up with an image that began with the letter N that's also in the shape of the letter N. And so originally when I had done this main lesson block with my children in the past, I had done Nur, which is an Arabic word for light, and I had done kind of a setting sun or a morning sun, and I had done the rays of the sun in the shape of the letter N, which turned out pretty good. But I didn't have a story that went along with that letter that I really wanted to do this time around. I think in the past I might have done something about the 5 daily prayers, starting with Fajr, or maybe talking about Maghrib when, the sun is setting. I actually can't really remember, but there were other stories that I wanted to do for the letter N that I thought would be really wonderful, different ayah from the Quran that would have really inspiring good stories. But I decided to change all of that and stick with stories that have to do with the previous prophets or with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so for this story, we decided to go with Al-Khidr and Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and the lessons that he learns by accompanying this man on his journey. And so we ended up doing N in the form of the night sky, which can also represent Nur in the form of the light shining from the moon. Because certainly they must have traveled at night and certainly near bodies of water, and so that's kind of where I came up with the story and the letter and the chalk drawing, and of course I got help from that book. I am kind of wrecking these buildings at the bottom. I don't know why they're so difficult, but I outlined them, and then I colored them in, and then I changed the color, and then I outlined them all in black, which actually made them look pretty bad. But in the end, when everything's kind of done, it doesn't really matter so much. But sometimes less is more. And so when you're working on some of these chalk drawings, if this is new for you, I would say go ahead and get just the rough outline, color it in simply, and stand back and decide if it needs more. But being so close to the chalk drawing, it's really hard to see what's looking good and what isn't. And sometimes you mess with something and it actually ends up looking worse than when you had it the first time. And so that's a little tip for you if you are struggling to do chalk drawings, or you're new to doing chalk drawings or even crayon drawings with your children, that sometimes when you step back, you find that it actually looks pretty good. So again, I'm drawing inspiration from the book, and I'm trying to do just a really beautiful purple pink night sky with purplish mountains in the background and then the water in the foreground. And I'm kind of drawing from 2 different images from the book. And so I really love those purple mountains, but they were in the original image that I was copying at first, so I hadn't left room for them originally. But it all works out in the end. It also works out in the end with the the crayon drawing that we do for this particular main lesson. You're going to get a different look when you're working on white paper with crayons versus working on a black chalkboard with chalk pastels. But in the end, I think both of them represent the story and the images pretty well. So I'm working on the night sky right now, and I have no clue how I'm going to get those ends into the night sky. And so right now I am just trying to make it look all these beautiful different colors of blue and purple with a little bit of plum and pink kind of mixed in. And I'm going to figure out how to get that N in a little bit later. Right now I'm just trying to make it look as colorful as possible. So there I am, just kind of drawing an N right into the night sky. I could not think of anything else that was more creative, so they're a little bit hard to see now, but I'm going to outline them a little bit later as though the light of the moon is illuminating streaks of clouds in the night sky that are shaped in the letter N. I'm also adding a little bit of white as a reflection in the water because of the moon kind of hanging there in the night sky. I also want to add a few clouds that are in front of the moon, kind of overshadowing the moon, and then you can kind of see the light of the moon kind of popping out behind those clouds. That was also inspired by the drawing, but it was a little bit challenging to do this with crayons, and I just completely skipped trying to do this with our crayon drawing. I want to make sure that the image is simple enough for my daughter to copy when we do this main lesson, but still inspiring enough to spark her imagination for this story. So I'm just going to add a couple more details here and there before this chalk drawing is done. You really could omit a lot of this extra stuff and be done in half the time, but here is a look at it once it's complete. I really like using these purples and blues and pinks that we don't normally get to use for this series of chalk drawings. Okay, so if you'd like to see some of the other lessons in this Islamic Waldorf-inspired main lesson block, you can tap on the screen right now. And if you'd like more information about this curriculum that I have created and the resources that I have used, you can find more information on my website at pepperandpine.com. And if you're interested in seeing how our homeschool is progressing on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at pepperandpine.